Thank you for joining us on this webinar. I present myself, Teresa Montoni, Secretary of the IATA Minimum Connect Time Working Group. And joining me on this webinar from the IATA project team is my colleague, Mr. Bernard Paul. And as well joining me is a member of our MCT working group, Mr. Thomas Gross from Swiss International Airlines, who is a presenter for today's webinar as well. A new minimum connecting time standard has been defined and adopted by the industry for airline processes in managing MCTs and facilitating the presentation, application, and the transmission of MCTs between airlines, data aggregators, GDSs, and IT providers. As this new standard will impact stakeholders globally, we hope this webinar will help you get a better understanding of the new MCT standard on your scheduling activity and processes. So we welcome all questions. We will take your questions during the presentation, so feel free to raise them during each slide. We will try to address them as best we can during this webinar. We may not have answers to all questions. However, as your questions are important to us and we would like to provide you with the proper and thorough answers, we will be circulating answers to all questions received to the attendees following the webinars, as mentioned by Jojo. Okay, so let's begin. All right, I've moved on to the next slide. Jojo, if there are any issues, please let me know. Okay, what is driving the MCT industry initiative? This initiative came about as there were no standards for MCTs. The working group in place has been working for the past 3 years to come up with a standard that would not only help the airlines, but also the data aggregators and processing systems. The MCTs have evolved and there were no standards. So therefore, code shares have expanded and that brings in complexity to the MCTs. Airlines using flight ranges for marketing now, operating in code share adds more complexity, as well as stations with multi-terminals add an additional layer of complexity to the MCTs. Because of no standards in place for processing, the airlines are getting different results across different GDSs. Identical itineraries will not be built and airlines would get different results across the platforms. If there are anything additional, Thomas, please feel free to jump in at any time. Anything new to say on this on your side, Thomas?
No, thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to the next slide, where the way airlines sell has evolved, as mentioned before, and the MCT process has not. So the MCT process has not changed, and to keep pace with the evolution of the airline distribution, the working group has come up with the standards to help with the distribution. And the filing of information or transmitting of the MCT data between the entities. Airlines and other distribution channels may consume MCTs differently through sources which can produce different schedule offerings and on different platforms. And this makes a data analysis can be difficult and imprecise to the way that the data is filed and maintained today. And to this date, the MCT data exchange between entities are not compatible with XML, and this will be coming in the near future. So how these problems affect our industry? Here we have a few key items on how these problems affect the industry. For example, passenger and baggage misconnecting. We want to do something to help eliminate this risk as it's costly to the airlines. With all the complexity also that comes with MCT, such as code share and multiple terminals, the MCT data has begun getting really complex. Other risks involve minor typo or errors that can be a risk as well when submitting your MCTs. Marketing connecting times are also being used now, for which comes some risk, and with the new standards, this will improve the process to make this smoother for the airlines. Okay. You can see all the other risks identified on this slide, and you can read at your ease. Okay, here we have a summary of numbers of exceptions filed for multi-terminal airports. You can see the numbers are quite high, filed in Paris, over 11,000. Because of code share and airlines going there, at the time you can see how the industry has gotten to this data explosion. Okay, there's no easy way to suppress a connection globally, and now the process has been made easier. This, if no agreement, if there's no agreement, you need to go to each station. The airline has to go to each station where no connections are to be built and file MCTs in all those stations. So that's where you see that the explosion of the data that's being processed with the MCTs. So now with the new standard in place, this process will be more efficient. So the airlines will save quite a bit of time when filing MCTs and processing. Now, with the background of the Mct Initiative, this is a background of information why the working group came together and the goal to improve and come up with more efficient processes for the industry. This is all to improve the airlines and the stakeholders involved with the MCTs. So the carriers and GDSs and aggregators are looking for more efficient processes, and the CISC formed the working group to explore the issues and make future proposals. Currently, you know that the Chapter 8 has been published, and that is a great help to the industry at the moment. So what the MCT working group is aiming is to have develop industry standards for the MCTs, introduce additional flexibility, deliver greater consistencies across the selling channels, and reduce manual updates, providing improved accuracy.
Perry?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to add something to the audience. Please keep in mind the drivers behind these initiatives are the airlines. We had been in contact with the GDSs and the aggregators and asked them to improve. And it's really the interest of the airline to make everything better for GDSs and aggregators and also other system providers. We know this is an effort to be spent. But as an airline, we really are in a situation that we need these points to have it better, and we pushed everybody forward. So nobody shall say the GDSs or aggregators wanted that and we airline have to. It's the other way around. We as airlines at the CISC meeting and afterwards in the MCT working group, we are the drivers. We push to make it happen.
Thank you, Thomas, for adding that. That was very important. And now on to the pathway to the industry adoption. This is where we are and the direction where we're heading towards. So as mentioned before, the PSC endorsed the proposed MCT standards and agreed timelines for the industry implementation. As of March, Chapter 8 was published within the SIM. A copy is currently available on the IATA website under the CISC web page. Under the CISC web page, there's also a tab for MCT implementation, and a copy of the chapter is available there. You will see that there's a little note that says that it's currently under review, as during a prototype testing, some issues have arisen, and that needs to be addressed and ironed out, and the technical group will be proposing changes to the Chapter 8 to come. IATA is embarking on an industry-wide awareness campaign, which we're currently on right now, outlining compliance testing and providing the user guide and technical FAQs. So at the moment, as soon as these important documents or any document related to this project will be made available to the airlines on the IATA website, as mentioned before, under the CISC webpage. The end-to-end testing in parallel with production system lead to the industry migration to the new standard to be completed by October 26, 2019, with a cutover to from October 27, 2019. These timelines were all approved by the PSC and the group. Thomas, do you want to add anything onto the different timelines on this slide?
Thank you.
Okay. Although the key benefactors are the airlines, this is also going to help the GDSs and the data aggregators. The airlines will be able to ensure consistent product offering across booking channels, reduce the volume of MCTs they will need to file and maintain. This will also improve accuracy and connection building, especially between code-shared partners. Supply the MCT updates to both aggregators and distribution, and for distribution. So the airlines will be filing their MCTs, the exception MCTs, to both OAG and Flight Global. And this is also a great opportunity to review and clean up the airline's MCT data. This is a task that is quite important to do for this implementation. Thomas, did you need to add anything else to the benefits to the airlines?
Thank you.
Okay. And now I leave the floor to the expert, Mr. Thomas Gross, on the key changes that are coming about.
Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Thomas Gross. I'm working for Swiss International Airlines in Zurich. I work in the IT department, and I have to tell you, I never made some changes and adaptations to the file myself. This is done by us in the business part. I'm responsible also in the Minimum Connect Time work group for the processes on these items. So maybe I cannot answer all the questions about the filing itself. The key changes of this new standard will have geographical suppression capabilities, new data fields to support the code share, and a new process hierarchy. There will be a standardized transmission for delivering the global MCT data to the GDSs, and therefore a standard submission format was introduced and includes the new user guide. Next slide, please.
Are there any questions up to this point?
Far so good, Terry.
Okay, thank you.
During the work group meetings, we recognized that geographical suppressions are an important item which shall be used in future to make the publication more readable. Currently, a carrier can only suppress airports, but usually it will be the case that something is valid not for a single airport, but maybe for a state, a country, or for a region. And to avoid that these always have to be added airport by airport, we added the possibilities to file in future state, country, or region as a geographical suppression. If flights are matching for connection building, And if no MCT exception is found, then the geographical suppression should be searched to determine if a connection can be built before applying the airport standards or station's default. So here you have a big opportunity in future to make your life easier. We know this is especially for the big carriers, but honestly, these carriers are those with a lot of the big MCT exception files. And whenever also a smaller carrier is co-sharing or is working together with a big carrier, it's also an advantage for them. Next slide, please.
Thank you.
On the next two slides, we show examples of geographical suppressions. Here is an example of AA suppressing a connections onto the airline code VY globally, but this is given in the first and in the second line. But in lines 3 and 4, we go the other way around and say that it is possible for Barcelona and for Rome. Next slide, please. In the MCT working group, we are discussing in a moment together with the system providers, aggregators, and GDSs the detailed rules of the geographical suppression. Therefore, this slide here is under review to assure that it is really buildable what we understood. We defined everything, and the discussions or when the system provider started to program our requirements in the last weeks, they found out that here we have a complex situation where we have to assure first that everything is working. So this item is in the moment under review. We hope to have it solved in November at the next MCT work group meeting latest. Hopefully we can do it already in the meantime during one or two common technical work groups. Bernard, do you like to add something to that?
No, not at this time. But yes, in the next couple of weeks, that will be addressed, and the documentation will be updated, including Chapter 8, as well as the technical guide and the user guide. They will be published online then after.
So we can go to slide 13, please. Co-chair became more and more important for a lot of airlines within IATA. The situation in the minimum connection time file brought really different scenarios at different airports. Very often it was the case that the MCT valid for marketing flights had not been the same as for operating. The airlines attended the MCT working group confirmed that this was not wanted by the airlines. Usually this was a mistake, or that one of the carriers updated and the other didn't. We assume what was valid for the MCT work group airlines, this is more valid for most of the airlines in the world. We are in the opinion that usually the operating carrier is the airline who knows best the situation. And as usually also the operating carrier is responsible at the airport, having the passenger in front in case of a mixed connection, he is really the key driver. To improve the situation for co-chair processing, we added new data fields. the data field departure carrier, a codeshare indicator, a codeshare operating carrier, and the same also for the arrivals. Can you go to the next slide, please? Today, it is not possible to file an MCT where an airline is the marketing carrier, except by specifying flight number range or single flight numbers. We all know it became more and more difficult to having flight number ranges, and if a new codeshare flight is coming, it always can happen that current flight number range was not big enough and have to be adapted, and makes a lot of effort to bring it on. Well, this example here is a Qantas flight who marketing on JQ, which they're operating. The next one, please.
Can I just interrupt you for a bit, please? I have some questions
Yes, please.
here. Did you take into consideration the maximum connected flight?
I don't understand this question.
For the person that asked that question, will you please elaborate? The question was, did you take into consideration the maximum connected flight? I will get back to that question with more elaboration. And there's another question here. By adding general suppressions, will this not create issues for other airlines to be able to involuntarily reaccommodate passenger?
The MCT is the vehicle to sell connections, and is very important to be shown on the availabilities. The involuntary rebooking shall not be negatively impacted on that.
Okay, there's another question. Regarding the did you take into consideration maximum connection time? For example, airport in LCA doesn't allow transit of passenger with more than 8 hours connecting flight.
Sorry, I do not have the experience to answer this question. We have to answer it in written, please.
Yes, we'll answer that afterwards, after the webinar. We'll get the proper answer and we'll communicate that.
So far, that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
On this slide here, we have 3 possible ways to file codeshares. Yes, also in future, it's possible to use a flight range or a single flight number together with a codeshare indicator. This is the top part. The middle part is using only the codeshare indicator, that is valid for all flight numbers. And the third one is the operating carrier specified as well. I hope that in future the second or the third opportunity will be chosen mostly to file codeshare marketing flights. If you are in the situation that the flight for all your operating carriers is the same, then you can take the middle one. If there are exceptions, then the one on bottom will be the valid solution. Next one, please.
Thank you.
That the codeshare processing is working correctly for connection building, it is important that the flight schedule is also filed correctly. So the codeshare must be presence of the DIA 50 on the schedule flight. Processes will look for the DIA 50 for each flight segment it is trying to build a connection. If the DI50, it will look to match with the co-chair MCT. For example, the S is specified in the co-chair identification table. If there isn't a co-chair MCT that fits the flight, it will look for an operating MCT for the flight specified by the DI50. A marketing MCT will override an operating MCT. If there is not the DI50 on the flight segment processing, we look for a corresponding operating MCT, as the flight will be assumed to be the operating carrier. For an MCT recorded to fit a flight, it's needed to match any other flight attributes as well. We can go to the next slide, please. Other changes were made. Until now, in the format, it is always given by minutes. In future, we express the time hours and minutes. The expression airports is now referred to stations, as the number of stations is increasing, where also stations, for example, railway stations or bus terminal stations, are parts of public flight numbers. So whenever a service is added by bus or by railway, or also by other ground transportation, the expression station is more precise. Then both departure and arrival station must always be specified, except where you're using a global suppression, a geographic suppression, excuse me. There will be the possibility that departure and arrival wide and narrow body field to separate the two types of aircraft. In the MCT working group, we learned and we discussed it that, for example, the boarding and deboarding time of a wide or a narrow body can be different due to the different number of aisles an aircraft has. The filing date will be included in the global distribution file and submitting carrier identifier field to be populated by the aggregator for distribution. This ends in a new data submission template. You can go to the next one, please.
There's another question.
Yes.
Yes.
What's DEI 50?
Teresa, the DEI 50 is the element showing who is operating the flight if you're marketing carrier. That's correct.
I'm thinking, yes, that is correct. We can confirm that is one of the elements. We can confirm which element that is.
No. I always, the other one is the DI 10.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So far.
Okay, you're on to.
Is there another question?
There was a question. Thomas, there was a question received with the registration of to the webinar, and I think it relates to the previous slide. It came in from Iberia. They're asking, would it be possible to enter airport code or at origin destination field, and if there's a clear hierarchy in place?
There is a clear hierarchy on place. We will see that in slide 19. And what do you mean with origin destination?
Would it be possible to enter airport code at origin destination field? Is this something we addressed in the previous slide?
Yeah.
I don't think we have that field in the record structure.
Okay.
You know,
I also don't see neither on the old nor in the new list of data fields the origin, the expression origin and destination.
Okay.
It could be possible that the content the person asks for can be added there, but maybe we have another expression for that.
Another
please,
term.
Yes.
Okay. No problem. We'll answer it accordingly after the webinar.
The one thing is, if it's not answered, then it would be good to capture from that person what would be the application that he or she sees of the airport code.
Okay, good point, Bernard.
And additionally, as it's somebody from Iberia, please keep in mind in 2 weeks' time there is a workshop in Madrid open for each and every airline. Maybe the person joins us and then we can discuss it on site.
Perfect.
Hold on one sec, Thomas. Jojo, will you be able to send to the people in the webcast the invitation for the
Madrid,
for that workshop in Madrid?
I will do that.
Okay, that would be excellent. Thanks.
Okay. So now, yes, all this will bring you a new template. Due to the before mentioned points, always is under review, but I definitely can tell you there is only small changes to be made, and it will be more or less self-explaining to you together with the next list on the next slide, please. Jojo, can you go to 19, please?
I've moved on to 19. Can you see it?
Not yet. Now it came.
Now it came? Okay.
Here is a list of all new data fields together with a data hierarchy. You see on the left hand is the current data hierarchy. There we have a list of data field, but there is no number on it. And the most important thing on this slide is on one side that we have additional fields and that we have a priority which is given.
Yes, and the hierarchy is currently under review by the technical group. Correct? I believe the flight range will be moving down in priority. I think that is the only change at the moment that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we can go to slide 20. So if on this example, the two MCT records below were available for selection in connection building using the current application hierarchy, MCT1 of 1 hour 30 minutes would be selected because a record with departure terminal becomes higher in the hierarchy. Even the MCT2 has both departure and flight range. And this is very important that you really, if you're gonna adapt your file in future, that you keep the list before in the hierarchy and see what is the one bringing. And the new application hierarchy, MCT2, would be selected over MCT1 as it has both a departure and arrival flight number range specified. And these are both in a higher position than the departure terminal as deemed to be more specific. So I think this will use a little bit of experience. Have a look on the list and very soon it will be self-explaining for everybody. Then we could go to slide 21 already.
Mm-hmm.
A summary of the key application rules. MCT must be applied according to the data hierarchy specified in SIM Chapter 8. This is important for everybody having an in-house system on your side using these. I'm going to read it. A minimum connect time with a co-chair indicator will take precedence over an MCT without a co-chair indicator. When you're using flight ranges, a subset of a wider flight range will be superseded. Any carrier MCT exception will overrule a geographical suppression. And the geographical suppression will take precedence over an airport standard or a status standard MCT. All these items are in Chapter 8, Section 8.9, more explained. Now we come to the point what is important for you as an airline. On slide 22.
Here you go.
Now I have it. As an airline, you hopefully are interested about the first sentence, which is very important. The aggregators will map your current MCT data to the new MCT format. But we propose that each and every airline please go through this file you're going to receive and review it. We will show you afterwards a few examples that from one line you will have in future 4 lines, because it is not 100% clear what was meant. Airlines should update your file only with the new template. For a certain time, we ask you to update your new format, but the old format is still valid. So until the data freeze, it is important that you can update your changes on the current format and send it to the aggregators. The data freeze will start next year, October 6th, for 4 weeks until November 3rd. The industry cutover date for the new format is 27 October 2019, when we're going to change to the winter schedule. What would happen if you are not ready? You won't be able to process the new MCT data after October 2019 in the new format. You may not build accurate connections. These 2 statements are valid for systems owned by you. GDSs are part of the working group. In the meantime, it's also Travel Sky is part of the working group. And we are in close discussion with them, and they are already on the way to program the new structure, and they look that they are ready next autumn. Very important is that you're cleaning up your existing MCT data probably before or whenever possible, before the aggregators can adapt their part. It makes the review much easier to you. On the next 2 slides, we have you 2 examples of how it could look for. On top, we see the current MCT record, 1 line, a Qantas example out of Auckland. And this could end up, or this will end up after the adoption of the aggregators into the new one, to the left 4 examples. Theoretically, all these 4 statements are valid. And as the aggregators do not know which one is valid, they bring all 4 of them. In this case, Qantas told us that the red is possible, so 3 can be removed afterwards to one line. And on the right hand side, after the editing, it should look like this. The next slide, we see an example with suppression. $999 will be in future blank. So an airport 999 MCT suppression will now have a blank time field, and the suppression indicator is set to yes. Also, this could end up in the following example, that from one line you will have 4 lines, where out of it only 1 is valid. So please keep it very updated and have a review on your data receiving by the aggregator.
Thank you. Any questions up to this point? After these 2 slides, last 2 slides?
So far, so good, Terry.
Okay. Okay, we move on to the next slide, Thomas.
What do you expect, or can you expect after the MCT data is mapped into the new format? Your MCT data could be 4 times greater than today. It is really important that you're going to review your mapped data and you remove the non-relevant records. Even the situation where you fly to in the moment would not be influenced with these items. Do it now. Maybe very soon you're going to adapt your schedule in a way that it would influence, and then we would have a negative impact, which is really not wanted by anybody. So really take the time and do it. We propose do not any longer take flight number ranges for co-chairs. I would even go a step further and I would say, I assume flight number ranges or even single flight numbers are not used anymore in future to define the MCT rules. We assume that all rules can be, and all situations can be defined by values outside the flight number or flight number ranges. And we propose that you really use these items and that you go with those attributes to make it and avoid taking flight number ranges. Because one day, due to any reasons, maybe you have to change a flight number and then it's no more valid. If you filed the example without a flight number range, if you used other attributes, it's still not valid even you're going to change the flight number range. You can use geographical suppressions to support your interline agreements. Use the new MCT submission template to file updates to your new MCT data. And both aggregators, data aggregators, confirmed that they will support you throughout this process. They will also track your progress and resolve any issues together with you. To reduce the amount of mapped record, you may need to review and start removing an unwanted record from the current data. If you do nothing, your online MCTs will continue to build connections, but the application of those MTCs can change. If there's no questions, we will go to the timetable.
1 second. There's a question here. Will we be contacted by one or both of the data aggregators with this new file, or do we have to ask for it?
My understanding is that the aggregators contact their clients whenever they're ready.
Yeah, Thomas, I believe Flight Global and OAG have started sending communication about the new MCT standard, but I would greatly advise everyone to actually make the proactive move to contact Flight Global or OAG to actually see what to do, what is the timeline for them, and make sure that you have enough time to review your current MCT records as of today before conversion, and then after in 2019, as you're going to see with the timetable, the converted data from the data aggregator, so that you have the cleanest possible MCTs, and they are much easier to manage.
Thank you, Bernard. I also understood that both aggregators already contacted their customers about the filing. If you're part of an airline group, it could be the case, and if only the mother airline of the group is customer of one of the data aggregators, it could be that only they are contacted. So please go within your airline group to the responsible person and ask them about the details. This is a scenario which can happen in the airline groups. Other questions?
Far so good.
The timetable, going first a little bit in the past. This March, the new MCT standard chapter 8 was available and is part of the published SIM booklet. The OAG will provide first data samples in April.
Yes, that data sample is currently available on the website under the CISC webpage, and you need to hold on to it because a new data sample will be available after the revision of the technical group.
Yes, this will be in here in September. The OAG will provide a full MCT file for industry testing. This file could be important for all of you, for all airlines having own systems have to be adapted. In October, pilot testing to validate the new MCT hierarchy and data fields. And then next January, the important test period starts. This starts end of January and goes until October 2019. The new MCT data will be available for airlines to review. Aggregators will start to accept airline updates to new MCT data. Airlines should continue to file updates to current data. It is important that the test period is already starting end of January, and hopefully you start early to test and not only on 1st of October. Then on 24th of March next year, we start the participation. We ask the participation to self-certify based on successful compliance tests. Maybe Bernhard can give here a little bit more details about what is here expected.
Yeah, it would be more the IT provider of the airline that is providing the service of the MCT, or the IT department of the airline that we need to be certified, and that would follow the data aggregator process and definition of the certification. So that is another point that airlines need to get from the data aggregator. So again, the message is check with the data aggregator as early as possible so that you get all the requirement that you need to meet, and the activity that you will have to go through in order to be fully compliant with the new format.
Thank you. Then the next date on our table is October 6, where the data freeze starts for 4 weeks. And on October 26 next year is the last day of MCT distribution in the current format, because 27 October is the industry cutover. That means worldwide it's valid only the new format by this date. Can you go on the next slide, please, on the last one?
Yes. Before we reach the last one, we can go through the some of the questions that we have received with registration to see if we can provide some information. Are you okay with that, Thomas?
Before we go to the question, I'm going to make a resume 2-3 sentences, please.
Sure.
For you as an airline, it is important the following points. Point 1, distributing your MCT. Please be aware that in the next months it's necessary to rework and to review your MCTs that you're ready to file under the new format. Maybe this is a good occasion to go to all your stations to assure that you have the new timings and that there is really the most actual and everything is inside. You do that for you, you don't do it for anybody else. It's your value, it's your advantage if the MCT data is correct. Another point is for connection building for the selling. If you have systems in your own organization with your own IT, which are building connections by their rules, reading the MCT files from one of the 2 aggregators, contact them, go and ask them that they are aware that they're gonna take all the documents which are existing. The connections are here on this, the points where they are stored are here on this slide. Make them aware that they shall start early. Afterwards, after 27 October 2019, nobody will give them any new file, actual file on the old format. So afterwards, they can't read any file anymore. Third point, systems selling flights for you, connections. Make sure that they know about it, that this change is coming. If you're not 100% sure that they know about it, ask them. The big GDSs, we have them under control. IATA is in contact with them. Also with other big systems, for example, Google, IATA is in contact. Smaller, local systems selling, we are not 100% sure if all of them are connected. All systems taking their data directly from one of the 2 aggregators are contacted already and will be contacted by the 2 aggregators. They inform them about the new format. Maybe there is somebody having it not directly from the aggregators. There you have to assure that also these airlines take it. Maybe you send them the data, the MCT data. So assure it, because otherwise they can't send it anymore on the most valid connection information. If you make these 3 points, you're aware and you're on a good way to be on the successful part next year when you're going to change the data. Any questions?
So far.
Excellent, Thomas. I will read some of the questions that we received and see which we can address on this webinar. Is that okay with you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. One of the questions that came from Avianca is how the changes will be made, additions, deletions of MCTs, would it always be through OAG and Innovata, a Flight Global at the time?
That's correct, yes. Everything is going to them, so they will adapt your current file, translate it into the new format, and then the airline, in this case Avianca, has to review it and together with the Excel file, the new template to make new lines or delete lines.
Okay, good. The next one came from Austrian and Swiss. They had a common question. They were asking for more detailed timelines, further support on how to submit MCTs in the new format, and will there be more workshops available?
The timeline's about bringing the format to the two aggregators. They will receive directly from the aggregators by which date and so on. And about new workshops, Bernard, can you inform
Yeah,
about?
there would be additional workshops. So there are two types of workshop. One is airline workshops, like the one that we have in Madrid in 2 weeks' time, and the one that we had in Beijing mid-August. We'll try to have some in South America as well as Africa and in Singapore. So those are possibilities, and we're checking the availability of rooms and etc. So those will be run between now until January, most probably. But the majority of the workshop will be done before the end of this year. One workshop will be run for the IT providers of the airline, and that will be on the 6th of November this year. So I'm inviting all the airlines present on the call to actually send at the sims@iata.org the name and the contact of your IT provider for MCT, so that we can include them into the invite for that workshop, which will be a bit more technical, so that they can ask all the questions that they may have on this new format and how they need to adapt to the process.
And especially to the persons sent the questions from Swiss and Austrian, they may contact me. I'm working at the Obstgartenstraße. Please send me a mail or join my office in the 4th floor in Building C.
Thank you. Next one we have here, we have Air Europa who wanted clarification. MCTs, when is the airline, MCT when the airline is a marketing carrier? So I guess you wanted to understand the difference when the airline is recognized as a marketing carrier.
The recognition about marketing carrier and operating carrier is part of the schedule. These in the SSM messages, the data field 10 and 15.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm pretty sure if you have any questions as Air Europe, there is a person in the MCT working group, Bea, who can support you here.
That's correct. I have a next question that came from Japan Airlines. We would like to know if Japan Airlines should do anything for starting new MCT rules and procedures, and you outlined that very well in your 3 points earlier on.
I can't add more.
That's correct. The next one is from goal, I believe. They're asking what is the ideal metric for MCT measurement?
So for me, it's very difficult to understand the question.
I might ask for clarification on this one. I'm not sure if they're maybe asking in the how the time is expressed for the MCTs.
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll ask clarification on that one. And I have another two. I have a few more. One came from Vueling. This will change the way of requesting an MCT update. And should we use another file format?
The process will not be changed, but yes, you have to use the new template, which will be distributed by your data aggregators. But keep in mind, there's a certain time next year where you're asked by your data aggregator to work with the new format for those valid after 27 October, and for the changes which are already valid before 27 October, you still have to do it in the old one. So for a certain time, it could be that one or the other change has to be made on two different formats.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so on this last slide,
There's just
you can
additional
see.
question on the call, sorry.
Oh, is there?
Yes, so
Okay.
basically it's a new format template and nothing to do with adding MCT to SIM file. Is this safe to say so?
I can't answer this question, sorry.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Regarding the next question, will you be able to provide Airline with carrier MCT label in new template format?
Repeat that question, Jojo.
Will you be able to provide Airline with carrier MCT label in new template format?
Teresa, do you understand airport MCT label?
Line
No,
with carrier MCT label.
I need MCT label down.
So
We may need clarification on that term MCT carrier label so that we can answer correctly, I think.
Sorry,
at one
will
point,
you be able to provide Airline with carrier MCT table in new template format?
Table in UMCT format, right? That's what you're
Yes.
saying?
I assume this will be the format where the aggregator is going to use to send it to the airlines after the conversion from old to new format. And this will be done according to schedule, the detailed schedule of the data aggregators, which is informed to the airlines.
Did that answer the question?
If it's not answering the question, I propose to contact the data aggregator to clarify this.
So we will also add the clarification in all our answers to the questions that we've received, even though they've not been answered through this webinar. Any additional questions, Jojo?
So far, none.
Okay, thank you. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add, Bernard or Thomas, before I proceed with the last slide?
Nope, no, all good from my side.
Okay, thank you. Thomas?
No, I hope that every airline on the call will follow these points. And whenever you're interested to learn more about, to join us, the European one in Madrid in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, thank you. That would be great.
Just
So
one
on this
question,
last,
Terry.
yes.
Should airlines file their own MCTs before?
I didn't understand it acoustically.
Should airlines file their own MCTs before?
each airline shall definitely continue to adapt and to make their changes on their current MCT files on the old format until next October. And to start on the new format, I propose to await until they receive the converted list from their aggregator. A good idea is to start internally already about thinking of how they could do it and about make clarification of these items to start it. But I would not send any data in the new format to the aggregators before I receive the converted file. This is my proposal.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Any additional questions, Jojo?
No, none so far.
Okay, thank you. So as mentioned throughout the webinar, all the documents related to the implementation will reside on this page at the IATA.org/SISC under there's an implementation tab under that page, and as the documents become available for circulation, they will be posted for all airlines to see on this page. So as a next step, you will receive all documentation related to the implementation from our local offices who will be there to support you. We're all here to support. With any questions that you have, please feel free to direct them to sim@iata.org and we will address them as best we can. So to conclude, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning and this afternoon, and hope that you now have a better understanding of what we're trying to achieve with these new standards. So as mentioned before, we will keep you updated with communications on our website at the iata.org/SISC page. Thank you everyone once again for joining. Hope you enjoyed this webinar.
Thank you so much, and the recordings and the supporting documents will be sent out shortly. So if there's no more question, thank you so much for your time and have a good day to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.